What's up, y'all? This is PODnas on the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel. Y'all know the deal, a little sports talk show from a predominantly Louisiana perspective. I'm Jarrett Roser. He's not Daniel Hawks. If you look closely, they wear their hair different. This is Tyler Eagles, illegitimate son of Ian Eagle. Make sure to share that on the internet. Everything you see online is true. And so he is Tyler Eagle. No, he's been on the channel a couple times before. Tyler Batiste, the deputy editor of NBA coverage. Are you the boss? What do you do?
Managing editor?
Editor of NBA
Managing
coverage
editor
for the
NBA
Athletic.
at the Athletic. What do I do is a completely different question, and we don't have enough time to get into that. Actually, we do. I don't do a whole lot, but I'm here.
So previous conversations with Tyler on Louisiana vs. All Y'all have centered around the NBA pretty much, but he is also aware of the sport of football to some degree. He is someone that, the end of last week's episode previewing the weekend got clipped off when Daniel and I were essentially putting Tyler on notice about a Saints-Eagles game that was on the horizon, and so it's probably for the best that didn't make the internet. We're going to talk about that, as well as he's another guy that went to LSU and was watching to some degree the two LSU Heisman quarterbacks on a Monday Night Football game, as insane as that would have been for us to talk about when we were students. But we'll talk some about that, as well as the Tigers themselves, and as always, get into some of the top high school plays from the weekend. So, Tyler, appreciate you. For folks that are worried about Daniel, I think he's got COVID. I don't know. He's under the weather right now, figuring it all out. So
I don't know. Can you say that? Is that like a HIPAA violation to disclose that?
I'm not a doctor. I'm not.
When?
I'm not. Look, at Happy's on like a Friday night, the ladies might think I'm a doctor. I might tell them that. It might circulate around the room.
Also at Pluckers on random Tuesday nights or whatever, Friday nights, Saturday nights.
That was
whatever.
also a Friday. I'm a Friday night doctor. The other 6.5 days a week, I'm just a guy with a t-shirt. And and so, look, I am not governed by HIPAA. I think actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the idea of HIPAA is an interesting topic this week in LSU sports news. We'll kind of get to that.
I did see some social media talk from a parent of a certain player in discussion. I did not dive into. I'll be honest. I didn't dive in to make sure that to confirm that was what it was presented. We were talking about Harold Perkins, I believe, mother. I saw people saying that's who it was, and I didn't do the research to make sure that's who it was. But I guess you're telling me that it is. So, but I guess maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and look, I don't even know if you can say his name. We might claim a FERPA violation or something. I don't know. But let's leave it alone for now and jump into, at least briefly, this Saints and Eagles game that I was really confident going in, and then things happened. It was a 3-0 Saints lead going into the fourth quarter. It was a 12-7 Saints lead late. There were a lot of mishaps by both sides going on. I mean, from start to finish of this game, where there was probably a lot left to be desired on your side as an Eagles fan for most of that game. But at the end of it, the Birds pulled this thing out, and you who, even though the conversation didn't make the channel last week, you had the receipts to know that I had been talking some stuff, and so you called me out on that properly on X, formerly known as Twitter. What were you watching? What were you thinking as you're watching this game unfold? And it looks like the Eagles may not score a single point in the Superdome, and then whatever it was that they had down the stretch to be able to pull that thing out.
Honestly, I was thinking, man, the defense looks good. Like I think the defense has it's been concerning if you're an Eagles fan. Even if you're not an Eagles fan watching from afar, you know that their defense has struggled, especially in week 2 when they gave up that long drive to Kirk Cousins and a Falcons team that I'm sure a lot of people watching this probably severely dislike if you're a Saints fan. But the whole time I was watching the game, I was thinking, man, if we can't blow this when the defense is putting up this type of effort in a hostile environment against a 2-0 team, like this is the type of game that you kind of have to make sure you pull through with your defense or for your defense. And as the game went along, I definitely didn't think that was going to happen. Jalen Hurts and his turnovers were one thing, but just the amount of injuries that were piling up for the Eagles. They lost Lane Johnson to a concussion. They lost Mekhi Becton, basically the right side of their offensive line throughout the game. A.J. Brown didn't play. Devontae Smith got knocked out of the game. They were down 2 offensive linemen, their top 2 receivers, and then they lost Britton Covey, who was normally their returner during the game, to a shoulder injury, I think it was. So I was just looking at the rest of the lineup and what they had available, and it was basically Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts, who probably isn't as evasive of a runner as he was a couple of years ago. He still does it a lot, but he doesn't, at least my perspective, doesn't look as fast or as shifty as he maybe did when he was in college and when he first started at the Eagles. So I was just thinking that the odds of them pulling this out were lower and lower. And the funny thing is, as you know, my mom, Crystal Brothers, shout out to her, lovely woman, big Saints fan. I'm watching on YouTube TV. She's watching in Louisiana. My stream was a little bit behind her, so she called me freaking out 15 seconds before I saw Saquon Barkley's long touchdown run, and I had no idea what she was talking about. She was upset, so I assumed it was good for me and the Eagles. And then I saw him break that long run, and obviously they ended up winning. It's fun for me, at least.
Yeah, I feel bad for Crystal every time.
She's fine. She'll be fine.
Anything goes well for the Eagles.
She's okay.
You're not shy. You're not shy about letting us hear about it either.
No, she's fine.
And you just enumerated all of the Eagles injuries, and so Eagles fans are not going to feel bad for Saints fans dealing with some of that. But I thought early on, Eric McCoy being injured for the Saints and also Cesar Ruiz being banged up through the course of that game was a pretty big difference maker in terms of just the amount of pressure and disruption that Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and those guys were able to cause. Going into the weekend, I put money on Saints -2.5, Alvin Kamara anytime touchdown score, and Alvin Kamara over, I think it was 70 yards. And he was racking up yards pretty well early in that game, the first drive or so. And then obviously you don't see a touchdown by anyone in that game for over 3 quarters. And after seemingly the early success moving the football by the Saints, it was just ugly to watch for a lot of that game. And now I'm interested to see moving forward how that looks for the Saints, shaking back from that, knowing that McCoy in particular is out for an extended period of time. I think Ruiz is back. But it's always a challenge to adjust on the fly as opposed to getting to kind of prepare through a full game week for it. But that was concerning for a group that had been as exciting for Saints fans early in this season. And McCoy had been phenomenal through the first 2 weeks of the season as anyone. But go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they're probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like these ebbs and flows always happen to start a lot of NFL seasons. I think we can all it's probably a safe assumption that the Saints offense isn't as good as it was in the first 2 weeks of the season, and it isn't as bad as it performed on Sunday against the Eagles. Like there's a large middle there that could still allow them to be a pretty successful team. So obviously it's about, as you talked about, it's tough to adjust on the fly. Having a full week of practice to kind of do that and make whatever adjustments are necessary and figure out how Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara and those guys are going to attack defenses. I think they're clearly not, I think a lot of people had really low expectations for them. They're clearly not as bad as a lot of people probably thought they were coming into the season. But I think it's going to be an interesting race because I think you can probably say Atlanta is probably not as bad maybe as some people thought. And Tampa started 2-0 and, the Eagles have them this weekend. So like that division is probably going to be pretty competitive. Whether the team that comes out on top is, a 12-win team or a 9 or 10-win team, we'll see. But it's going to be some interesting games as the season goes along between the NFC South.
That Bucs team impressed me more watching them some in week 1 against the Washington Commanders than I was hoping to see from the Bucs. And we'll kind of jump from this focus on the Saints and Eagles early on to that Monday night game where where again, we're with Tiger Eagles here. He's as much as an Eagles fan as a Tigers fan, and so had eyes on the matchup of Jayden Daniels and Joe Burrow on Monday night. That I don't know that we've really talked about this before, even off camera, but if you go back to us as students and said, look, LSU, who we'll talk about after this Monday night game, LSU is going to have two Heisman quarterbacks playing on Monday Night Football. They're going to be stocked at that position for the foreseeable future. We just hope they'll be able to play some defense as the SEC slate rolls around. How bizarre of an LSU world are we living in now, where we're seeing these historical moments in terms of quarterbacks both in purple and gold and what they go on to the next level and do?
I'll say there was probably maybe a 2-day stretch that I thought Andrew Hatch was going to win the Heisman. Like, I didn't think that at all. I think he's still undefeated as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he lost as a starter before he got hurt in that game, whatever game that was. But
Auburn. You've been listening to the Amos Morale propaganda long enough to feel like Andrew Hatch is the guy still.
Yeah, and that Jevin Sneed is going to be a Hall of Famer, but we don't have to get into that. No, it's wild, man. Like, like we were in school at the same time. Obviously, we saw some great times, national title, SEC championships, and all that stuff. But like, toward the end, Matt Flynn and Hatch. This was after we graduated, obviously, but like Lee and Jordan Jefferson, when they were kind of really, taking up the quarterback room, nobody really thought that like LSU would be anything resembling a quarterback factory anytime soon. And like now you saw it with Joe Burrow, you've seen it with Jayden Daniels, you see it with Nussmeier. Like he's one of the best passers, in the not only SEC but probably the entire country at this point. It really is weird to watch and to know that like from a national level, there's enough interest that those guys are dueling each other on Monday Night Football. Like that was obviously that's a AFC versus NFC game. So that's clearly a game that was circled on the calendar before the season, I'm sure. And the schedule makers made it a point to highlight this. And it's just really, it's good to see that those guys are kind of having the success that they're having, and also, bringing some positive eyes back to LSU and obviously the school that is near and dear to both of our hearts and a lot of our hearts. It's fun.
The statistics for Jayden on Monday night were pretty eye-popping. Yeah. I mean, honestly, in general, but certainly for a guy in his third game as a professional quarterback. And I was just trying to
final throw was that last throw for the game-winning touchdown was like, it was one of those that hung up in the air, and as it's going, you're thinking, oh, it's up there too long, and then it falls like exactly where it needed to be. I don't know too many people who could, rookies or veterans who can make that throw under that type of pressure, not only from the defense coming in, like trying to sack them, but just like the moment that it was in the game. It's like, it was wild. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, he got drilled on that play and dropped it perfectly in the bucket over Terry McLaurin's shoulder. And it was his first career passing touchdown took 2.5 weeks, but it ends up going to an offensive lineman on a really well-designed and well-executed play. And by that point in the game, he was just full-blown cooking. But even early in this game, you saw some missed opportunities, him just not seeing some things fast enough, and then he hit the big throw deep on an absolute rope. I don't remember. It might have been the second quarter, but started to make plays more and more consistently to the point by the end of this thing, he seemed unstoppable. And so it was watching, and we'll see the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of a rookie quarterback, but a lot felt like you were watching the coming out party, emergence, turning the corner, whatever, in real time from where he started at the beginning of that game, where he's making some plays, but missing some things. And again, just a lot happening for him very fast, to all of a sudden, is he the best quarterback on the field right now, which we can talk more about that because Joe had a phenomenal game despite what Chris Canty and Shannon Sharp and those guys might want to say on ESPN. But it was wild to watch just the strides it seemed like Jayden was taking during the course of a single game in prime time.
And it's wild too to like, and you're obviously a lot closer to it than I am, but like if you think about 2 years ago where this guy was coming in as a transfer from Arizona State, he played a lot of time there at Arizona State, was put up some okay numbers, but was certainly nothing close to what anyone was talking about as a first round type talent or a Heisman Trophy contender. The strides that he's made, over the past 2 years in college, and obviously what he's doing early in his NFL career, it's just that might be even more crazy or crazier to think about than like we were talking about with LSU quarterbacks. Just they're both equally. Obviously, this is a shorter time frame, but I don't think anybody, maybe besides Jayden Daniels and his family and those close to him, kind of could have predicted where he is in terms of his NFL career and his ability, and what the ceiling might look like right now. He's got a hell of an arm. He's put on, he was really, really skinny a couple years ago. He's not skinny now, but obviously he's put on some weight and is able to kind of withstand some of those hits. This first year at LSU, especially, he was taking a lot of those hits that as a fan you kind of look at and you're like, why are you doing this? But yeah, like that was crazy. I hope he continues. I hope he keeps it up. Obviously, we were talking about with the Saints. Washington's offense is probably not as good as it showed Monday night, but they're far from some of the struggles that they've had at the quarterback position and overall as an organization, probably from the past few years. The future looks bright, and especially in the NFL, you have to sort of capitalize on those years where you have a pretty decent quarterback play before you have to inevitably kind of give a large piece of the financial pie to that quarterback. So we'll see what happens with them over the next obviously this season, but I think it's an exciting time for the next 3 or 4 years. I hope they only lose 2 games a season to the Eagles, but hopefully they do pretty well otherwise.
I was going to ask you, kind of separating Tigers fan and Eagles fan and just dueling concern levels. As a Tigers fan, how would you kind of quantify your concern for the shots that Jayden Daniels takes at times versus, as an Eagles fan, your level of concern for, okay, this is a young quarterback that we're about to have to deal with in the division for the foreseeable future? Which Tyler is more concerned right now?
That's a good question. Ask me in like 2 weeks. Let me see a little bit more of the season. I mean, I'm always one of those guys, like I want the LSU players to play well and perform well, but maybe I don't want them to win all the time if they're playing the team I like. And I'm sure Saints fans feel the same way, like about, if the Saints are, they're playing, I think they played the Bengals last year, or am I?
The years blur together.
I think 2 years ago they played the Bengals, because if I'm not mistaken, that was when the Saints came up to Pittsburgh when I was living there. So that would have been the year they played the Bengals. Like, I'm sure that Saints fans wanted Burrow to, play well and look good, but ultimately with the Saints victory. And that's kind of how I feel watching not only Jayden Daniels, but Joe Burrow and any other sort of LSU guys that are out there. The purple and gold obviously is kind of ingrained in me, and it's not going anywhere. But it's nice when they both do well within a certain time period, which I got lucky with that a couple years ago. I got an Eagles Super Bowl and an LSU title within 2 years of each other. If that would happen again, that'd be pretty nice.
We've danced around Joe a little bit, and I mentioned the question down the stretch of that game of, is Jayden Daniels the best quarterback on the field? And that obviously became one of the talking points this week of just the Bengals being 0-3, and so a lot immediately starts turning to the quarterback and whatnot. Most of Joe's numbers were honestly better than Jayden's by the end of that game in terms of some of his totals, and he led a team that did not punt or turn the ball over once, scored 4 touchdowns, 2 field goals, had another field goal attempt that they missed. He threw 2 beautiful touchdown passes to his guy, Jamar Chase, another LSU guy that we're rooting for each week. and this is a division, obviously, that you've also watched closely, having worked in Pittsburgh for years. What are your thoughts on right now where this Bengals team is? I feel like it's the only 0-3 team that I could realistically see kind of shaking back and maybe making some playoff level noise. But 0-3 is just a tough place to be to start an NFL season. Just where this Bengals team is, the tough start, where Joe is as a quarterback bouncing back from his injury last year. What's kind of your, I guess, progress report on how concerning it is of where they are, how much you blame Joe and the offense versus how much of that is a little bit overblown when you hear some of even former NFL players on some of these national networks questioning him and whether he made enough plays on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think just watching the game, it seems like the offensive line is still not good, essentially. I mean, I don't know if there's like a nicer way to put that. So it's tough to like, I mean, Burrow's not a statue in the pocket, but he's far from, a Lamar Jackson. Like, so you can't put it all on him, or I don't think it's wise to put it all on him to be able to escape, 25, 30 plays a game or nearly every time he drops back to try to make something from nothing a lot of times. Like, I'm curious, and there's no way to tell this, but like the vibes, like, T. Higgins in the, in the offseason, Jamar Chase, and like, should he be paid? I think it was week 1 where Jamar Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he thought it was a horse collar or a face mask in on a play, and then like it wasn't flagged, but it ended up being the right call, and he was kind of like, Burrow had to kind of hold him back from kind of going at the official and stuff, and it just seems like, I know a lot of that is probably frustration, especially because they reached, got such a high early on, making the Super Bowl against the Rams a couple years ago, that like to be able to not follow that up with anything resembling, sort of consistency, I'm sure it's frustrating for anybody who's been there for the past 3 or 4 years. Like you said, Burrow's stats are not terrible. I think he's completed more than like 70% of his passes. I don't know if he's thrown an interception yet this year, but that something just seems off. And, is it the roster makeup? Is it the coaching? Is it, the relationship between some of the star players and the coaches? Like, there's really no way for us to kind of know. But, I could definitely see, especially if things continue to go sideways this season, like Zach Taylor's been there for what, 5-6 years at this point. Like, that is, you can't waste, if you believe Joe Burrow is what we all think he is, and Jamar Chase is what he clearly has been, which is, a top 10, maybe even top 5 receiving talent in the league, that like you can't waste these years. And I could certainly see a coaching change being on the horizon there at some point. But that division is odd because, the Steelers are 3-0.
Yeah, you don't need offense to lead the division.
Apparently, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think anybody anticipates the Steelers like being like a 12 or 13 win team at this point, even though they are 3-0. A couple of weeks, go the Bengals' way, they'll be right back into the thick of things. But not only the AFC is just so tough. Like you said, it's gonna be really tough for them to like. They probably have the best chance from 0-3 coming back, probably better than Jacksonville and Tennessee. But it's not going to be easy, especially when it looks like, Buffalo's rolling. I don't think anybody thinks the Ravens are, a 1-2 type talent. Kansas City hasn't even played that well, I don't think, and they're, doing Kansas City things. So they're going to be scared when we get to like November and December. But yeah, Joe Burrow's kind of always started slow too in the Bengals. Sometimes that turns around, and we'll see if this is another one of those times.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason, or one of the biggest reasons, certainly, that you have some level of faith that the Bengals could be among those 0-3 teams that have any level of chance to turn around is Joe Burrow. And to your point with some of his statistics earlier this season, he's completing 71% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been sacked 8 times through 3 games. His quarterback rating numbers are actually among the highest in both rating systems, among the highest in his career. And so there's a lot to like about what he's doing. It just, it's been a rough start for the team as a whole.
It's just like, not like you watch it and you would never guess those are his numbers, like watching the game. It's not like he's just going out there and carving up defenses. It's more of like it's more like Joe Burrow 2018 LSU and less Joe Burrow 2019 LSU. Like the numbers are there, but it just feels different. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about LSU.
Let's do that.
We won't get into too much depth, but we alluded to one of the storylines with them right now. Obviously, Harold Perkins being injured. We'll see the extent of that. Brian Kelly confirmed Monday it was an ACL, but they're coming out of this UCLA game where, from their perspective, the second half shutout of the Bruins, they feel like they showed some level of proof of concept of the defense can be what they need it to be or hope it to be as things ramp up here quickly. They have South Alabama this weekend, a high-powered offense, and they have a bye week, and then it's right off the bat Ole Miss leading off the gauntlet of the SEC schedule. I don't know how closely, I assume pretty closely, just knowing you watched that UCLA and LSU game, but just your thoughts from somewhat the outside or from the fan perspective of where this LSU team is and what you're seeing from them at this point, a few weeks into the season.
I mean, they should be able to, like, number one, I came into the season thinking that, like, oh man, this is the schedule works out in LSU's favor, right? Like they've got something that like not a lot of teams have nowadays, which is like a quarterback who's been around for a few years and hasn't transferred and has kind of played a little bit at times. He obviously played, Nussmeier obviously played the bowl game last year against Wisconsin, was it? Was that the bowl game? Mm-hmm. So like looking at the schedule, you're thinking, all right, like LSU doesn't play Georgia. They don't play Texas. They get Ole Miss. They don't play Tennessee, and they get Ole Miss and Alabama at home. Like there's not a whole lot more that you can like kind of look at a conference slate, and obviously you always have surprises. Texas A&M is ranked in the top 25. Oklahoma started out pretty well before they lost to Tennessee this past weekend. So there's kind of ups and downs, but like looking at the schedule ahead of time, you think, especially with a 12-team playoff, that LSU sneaking in there is not out of the realm of possibility. I still feel that way. As you know, I went to Las Vegas for the opener against USC, and I think a lot of people just kind of forget that like USC does have talent too. Like it's not just I think maybe a lot of times like us being SEC folks, we forget that there are talented football players who are in other conferences. USC obviously beat a Big Ten team though, but like they've got talented players. I thought that game in particular, LSU forced 2 fumbles throughout the course of it and didn't recover either of them. If they recover one of those fumbles, they stop a USC drive. Maybe they go down and score. That's kind of a completely different game. But watching them from afar, I got a couple of thoughts. Number one, like as much as we can get the ball to Mason Taylor, like I think he's so good. And you don't see that type of weapon from the tight end position a lot of times. And I think LSU needs to lean on him as much as they can. I think obviously getting the ball to Caden Durham as often as possible is probably a good idea too. I mean, he's looked exciting in the flashes that we've seen. And the one thing that came up, and I texted a couple of our friends about this, is if basketball fans out there maybe have heard of the Ewing theory, which is like the team loses its best player or its star player, and then somehow it comes together and works out for the better without him. Not to say that player is still not one of the most talented ones, but like the team just kind of galvanizes around and gets it done. I'm thinking, or I'm hoping that kind of is the case with Harold Perkins' injury. I think that the fact that it happened now is probably, there's never a good time for an injury like that to happen, but looking at their schedule, they got South Alabama and then they've got a week off before Ole Miss comes to town. Like hopefully they can get enough reps together and some practice time to sort of be in as good of a position as they can be when Ole Miss comes and starts that gauntlet that you talked about. They played well the second half against UCLA, and hopefully that's the start of something. But it seems like this is going to be pretty similar to past couple of years where LSU, as we've talked about with the quarterback position, is like it's not a team that's going to go out there and win like Michigan. It's a team that's going to go out there and try to score 35, 40 points and hope that you only score 25 or 30 and try to win that way. Is that a recipe for success? Time will tell, but like it's going to be fun to watch, I think, as a fan. Probably frustrating too, but also fun. And I also say as a fan, I think I've been pretty impressed with Garrett Nussmeier. Kind of had a reputation as sort of a gunslinger the past few years, where he's going to make some big throws and he's going to put up a few touchdowns, but you're going to have to live with a couple of interceptions when he doesn't. And he hasn't quite done that this season. I was really impressed in the opener where he, the only bad throws he made in that USC game where it was that he missed the guy in the flat toward the end and then obviously the end of the game. But during the course of that, he could have pressed, especially being his first start against major competition in the regular season. He could have forced a lot of throws. He hasn't done that yet this season. Hopefully that is not the case when we play Ole Miss, Alabama, and those teams. I think he's really talented, and I think this team will go as far as he takes them, whether that is to the college football playoff or a 7-5 record. I guess we'll figure out over the next few months. Hopefully it's the former, not the latter.
He's been great. Honestly, I think that game in Vegas was maybe their closest to a complete game we've seen all season, other than some of those plays late down the stretch, and that it's just like you mentioned, USC is good. I told
our friends that this weekend, the game that I'm most disappointed by this season is the one against Nichols. Like, that's like the most disappointing game to me. If you're South Carolina was impressive. I think South Carolina is good, and going over there and getting out of that. Like, if LSU is what we all hope LSU should be, no disrespect to Nichols. I lived in the Thibodeau area for a while. Got nothing but love for the Colonels, but like, if LSU is what LSU wants it to be, then like that game should not be as close as it was for the first half of that game. Like, they've got to come out and show how good they are and show that they are a contender. That's like the most disappointing game I've seen so far.
Yeah, we'll see if they put it all together. You mentioned the Ewing theory with Perkins out. What's interesting to me, kind of in line with that, is the way that LSU has insisted on trying to use Harold Perkins just to prepare him for the NFL doesn't lean into the strengths that make him the most dangerous playmaker on that defense anyway. And so a lot of the things that he's being asked to do and has seen growing pains in learning to do at a higher level are things that honestly some of the other linebackers may be better suited to do right now in terms of their respective developments. And so I'm super interested to see how all that plays out. I hate that Howard Perkins is injured when he's on and when they're letting him really peel back and go chase opposing passers. He's one of the most dangerous weapons on defense in the country, but that hasn't been how they've predominantly utilized him anyway. Obviously, you take away the ability to have him in some of those moments now. And so that's part of why Braden Swinson's development has been so big and some of the heater that he's on. But yeah, we're going to find out a lot about this team really quickly in mid-October when Ole Miss comes to Baton Rouge.
Yeah. I hope. I've got a buddy of mine in Pittsburgh who's someone I don't think you've met, but he's never been to an SEC game before. And so the plan, at least now, is as of now, is he's going to pop down here and we'll drive over to the A&M game on the 26th. And I kind of told him if, depending on how the next 4 weeks goes, we'll determine whether I actually want to go to that game. So I hope we're in a good enough spot that making that 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive from Dallas is going to be worth it and not something that I don't want any part of down in College Station. But I feel confident. I think they'll be okay. Ole Miss is really good, and they've killed everyone they played, but they also haven't really played anyone yet. So, and they've got to come to Tiger Stadium, so that's always a good advantage to have if you're LSU.
For sure. We have the 4 high school plays of the week to get to before we get out of here. Also, I don't know if you have any interest. Before Daniel went down sick, he really wanted to rant.
We think. We don't know.
We don't know. Allegedly. He really wanted to go on a Hawks rant about Colorado rushing the field after beating Baylor. So I don't know if you want to substitute a rant about that. If so, you need to be prepared to get real loud and go real long.
I can do my Daniel impression. Like, how can you rush the field? Like, you can't rush. You're Colorado. It's kind of like a weird Harry Carey SNL, but also way too much deep dish Chicago pizza type situation. Which when I said Harry Carey, I didn't even put together that Daniel is there. But yeah,
there's a Harry Carey-ness to it. He sounds like, and this is not new information I mean, it's new information maybe to connect it for folks watching the episode. So for the 16 of y'all that have made it this far, he sounds like a hormone monster from Big Mouth, the animated show on.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to mention the Muppets somehow.
I would not sully the wholesome Muppets with the guy that we had to create a curse jar for the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel to bring him into the fold.
Now I have to make sure I'm not cursed. I don't think I curse. I don't think I have anything in the jar, but I'm not going to go on a rant against about Colorado rushing the field against Baylor. I don't have a strong enough opinion about it. I'll leave that to our good friend Daniel to kind of pick that back up when he's here again. Get better, Daniel, if you can hear us.
He may come back hot with it in the next couple of days, but let's jump into the high school plays of the week candidates from week 3. Tyler, by all means, react as you see fit. I've already seen all these plays several times over.
Am I going to be able to watch these? Okay, I can see them?
Yeah, I'm going to put them in there. So the first play is actually an LSU commit, a really highly ranked running back out of the New Orleans area named Harlem Berry, who shows an awful lot on this one run this weekend. Through the hole, quick feet, guy gets a hold of the jersey, drags him for a few yards, bounces away from him and another guy, keeps his balance, and then off to the sideline, the races in the end zone. Just a glimpse of some of the complete package that Harlem brings to the equation. As an LSU fan, I'm sure that's fun to watch.
Was that? Yeah, that was some really, really solid, you might call it a Harlem shake.
I've been watching
Harlem shake.
Are people in your apartment?
No.
Okay. So there's a behind the scenes viewing from Dallas of the latest episode of PODnas. So that was Harlem. Also right in your wheelhouse, a high school at least that you'll be really familiar with, Westgate High School down there in New Iberia, south of your hometown, Lafayette. Jabari Antoine, a one-time LSU commit, now committed to Miami. He's a defensive back, but plays quarterback quite a bit for his high school Tigers and has an impressive run early on in a game against Lafayette Christian on Friday night. Just changing directions, seeing a hole the other way, and then he's pretty much gone. He doesn't have to make a whole lot of guys miss at that point once he has his seam, but helps kind of
impressive closing speed by that defensive back there, though.
Yeah, let's see if I can even tell who that was.
Number 0 it looked like?
I'm not sure. And that footage is blurry enough that I'm not positive. There's a chance that it is LSU defensive back Sage Ryan's younger brother, Sky Ryan. There's a chance it's Chris Hilaire. There's a few guys it could be for that LCA team. But LCA had won the first 4 meetings against Westgate, including some big wins the last couple years. Was a big win for Westgate to get back on the right side or get onto the right side of that series this past week in week 3. A big play that I got on Thursday night, also out in the Lafayette area, went down to go see Southside host Madison Prep, and Madison Prep wide receiver Keon Robinson with a ridiculous catch and then run after the catch. You kind of notice what he does to create some additional space. The throw from Tylen Johnson goes up over defender. Ooh, nice little jab there. You saw that? That right? A little right hand to the chest. That Keon got in there. The catch through a chance to break it up by that DB was impressive, but then that right there to put him on his butt and go take off for the touchdown, pretty impressive play.
Very impressive. I have a bit of a logistical question, and this is me not living in the Lafayette area and being old enough to where I was in school before Southside existed. Do they play their games at Como? It looks like a Como.
This is at Como. Yeah, this is at Como on Thursday night. The Sharks of Southside down there in Youngsville are still waiting on their stadium to be completed to move into their new stadium next season. They've bounced around a little bit. I've seen them at St. Martinville, another school in the area that you and your family are certainly very familiar with. But
shout out to Andy Baptiste in St. Martinville. We're probably cousins.
The Sharks did play that one at Como, and despite the great play in the third quarter there by Keon Robinson of Madison Prep, the Sharks go on to win that game, their first win of the new season, first win of the new coaching era under Jess Curtis. And then always love a big man touchdown, and this was a big one for Franklin Parish junior defensive lineman Tavon Bell. They were going against Calvary Baptist, a 2A team off of a state championship a year ago that a lot of folks looked at as one of the top teams in the state this year, regardless of classification. Some cases made, are they the best team? They've had a tough go of it the last couple of weeks now with a couple of bigger classification schools, including this Franklin Parish Patriots team, who kind of put some folks on notice, a little bit of a wake-up call to folks around the state. And it all started with big Tavon Bell early on, intercepting. Nice leaping interception of a guy for Calvary Baptist does not throw a whole lot of interceptions. And then he is gone the whole way the other way for a touchdown to put the Patriots ahead early, send the town of Winsboro into some hysterics early about getting to start it that way. And again, big win for the Patriots, a good team that was pretty overlooked. And I think folks have kind of woken up on them a little bit there, but talking to Tavon's quarterback, Pook Ellis, yesterday, he said watching that play, he didn't think there was any way Tavon was getting up to get the ball, let alone taking it back 50 or 60 yards the other direction.
That was impressive, man. Like I was when you started playing the play, I was not expecting that. I'll put it that way. Like not only to get up, but to get the breakaway speed to get away from anybody to try to stop him was man, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that at 17, let alone 37. So shout out to him.
Well, yeah, not after, a former Lafayette area high school and college basketball phenom space jammed all of your athleticism when you guys bumped knees in 8th grade or whatever the hell that was.
Flashbacks. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. Thank you for jumping in, filling in for Daniel. Hopefully Daniel feels better. I know you have a fast approaching NBA season, so appreciate you taking the time. It's a little bit insane how quickly this offseason has flown on y'all's guys' end.
Yeah, two media days already this week because the Celtics and Nuggets play overseas to start the preseason. Everybody else starts out on Monday, and yeah, I think it feels a lot shorter because of the Olympics, and there was so much basketball talk over the summer months. But yeah, the regular season's here. We're going to see if the Celtics can repeat, or will we get a six different champion in a row? Am I counting right? 7th, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, Nuggets, Celtics. Yeah, six different champion in a row. So yeah, I'll plug our own stuff and tell everybody to stay tuned to the Athletic NBA content for a lot of preview stuff coming up over the next few weeks.
There you go. He's Tyler Batiste of The Athletic, a former LSU Tiger Reveille editor who keeps an eye on the LSU guys, both on Saturdays as well as obviously we talked about some of these guys in the NFL now on Sundays and Mondays. Appreciate him filling in for Daniel Hawks, who we think will be back in a couple days. I'm Jarrett Roser. Thank you all for tuning in to PODnas on the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel. Until next time, y'all be well.
Be well.